The biggest problem in interactive mystery stories is player agency, ultimately, which is often why a lot of games involve you attacking your problem rather than solving your problem. At least that's my opinion. But what do I mean, and what do I think are some of the solutions to that problem? Hello, my name is Evan, and if you will indulge me for the next few minutes, I want to talk about my love of mystery stories and my love of games, and how I think, in my opinion, you can try and maybe marry the two in a successful combination. So I really love crime fiction stories. It's one of my favorite genres. In particular, the whodunit, the very sort of often British style Agatha Christie. Without question, Agatha Christie is one of the greatest English writers ever, whether it's in the mystery genre or outside of the genre. I also really enjoy magic tricks, magical illusions, and in my personal opinion, I feel there's a lot of overlap between those two things. See, I think a good mystery story, whether it's crime fiction or a spy thriller or anything like that, is a lot like a Penn and Teller style magic trick. So Penn and Teller have a very unique style of magic. Basically, they will show you a magic trick, very classic, how it's done, and the audience is left kind of amazed. But then they will have the audacity to not only do the trick, but kind of show you how it was done. So then when they show it to you, you can sort of admire their mastery and their skill. I feel that the authors and filmmakers of mystery stories do a similar thing. They have their audience there and they show them some sort of strange occurrence, some sort of mystery, some sort of puzzle that they can't quite understand. Everything's in front of them. They should know what's going on, but they don't. And then at the end of the story, when the crime is solved, the detective will come forward, they'll explain how everything happened in front of them with all the evidence there, and the audience gets a sense of relief at the problem being solved, and maybe even amazed, and they'll go back and reread, and yes, indeed, all of the evidence was on the stage for them to see in order to know how the mystery occurred. And this, of course, leads us to another aspect, which is a very popular part of the mystery story, and that's the idea that you can play an armchair sleuth. You're able to sit there with all those pieces in front of you, and if you start to read a couple of different stories or watch a couple of these different films, you'll start to understand how some of these stories work, and you yourself are able to put together the pieces before the detective does. You get to be the detective, which is a wonderful feeling, to feel that you in some way could solve this problem. You yourself could make this world and this problem right again, which is a very empowering feeling. It's a feeling that a lot of game makers try to emulate, whether it's in video games or RPGs. And that's where things start to fall down a little bit. You see, a video game or an RPG game is a curated experience, but it is not as curated as a novel or a film. In a novel, you only can read the words that are written on the page. In a film, you will only see what the camera is pointed at. And so, like a magician, the author and the filmmaker can direct your attention to what is important, or direct your attention to what is important while doing something else over here that you don't notice. So they're able to control the attention of the audience very effectively. Now, in a game, there are ways that game makers or rule makers are able to sort of direct the action and the flow of a game, but nonetheless, not as strictly as a filmmaker or a novelist. The audience, for lack of a better word, has a lot more agency. They're not just a passive audience, they are an active player. This isn't to diminish the role of an audience interpreting a text like a film or a novel, but literally in a game, the players can direct the camera to look where they want to look. The players in an RPG can ask questions that the author does not intend anyone to ask or would think anyone would ask. And this autonomy, it's like trying to do a magic trick, but instead of the audience sort of being there for the trick, the audience is the audience is able to move, so then they can choose a different spot. So that reveals that reveals that what was I saying? And ultimately, the inability to literally have your audience in a fixed perspective makes the magic trick nature of a crime mystery story completely break down. And I feel that the creators of narrative-based games know this. They know that they can't rely on an audience necessarily stumbling upon that slightly obscure clue. They can't rely on the fact that they will listen to a certain character's turn of phrase perfectly. They can't control that. Well, they can. They do have tricks up their sleeve in order to direct the attention of the player, but often that then takes away the autonomy, which is why you're playing the game in the first place. You're trying to engage with a different kind of media where you have more autonomy. And all of a sudden, when the creator starts to take away that, you have an on-rails game or a mystery game where all the mystery elements are revealed in cutscenes. It's no longer really a game. And I feel that this brings us to the saddest part of these sort of mystery style interactive experiences. It leads to sort of this combative relationship between the players and the GM, the story creator. It's going to be the story creator's job to try and make a story that's not so obtuse that it becomes frustrating in order to try and figure it out, but also not so hand-holdingly easy that players become bored. And this is not an easy thing. Ultimately, it can make the GM very frustrated as they're sitting there wondering why their players cannot see that smoking gun right there in front of them is the important clue in the whole mystery. While the players are sitting there going, I can't guess what's in your head. Stop saying that in that weird inflected way because I'm just not getting it. And game makers know this. Most of the time, these sort of mystery stories rely a lot on the atmosphere of a mystery story, the atmosphere of a detective noir story, or the atmosphere of a spy thriller, rather than actually the fundamental ideas of these mystery stories. Or if they do have a complicated plot, it's often revealed in cutscenes, whether literally cutscenes in a video game or in a role-playing game, the GM explaining in a lot of detail the scene, the events, everything that happens while all the players sit there going, yep, okay, great, yep, okay, what do we do? Ultimately, it's just easier if in some sort of murder mystery story, if the murderer is very apparent early on, the players know who the murderer is, it's now just a matter of can they get to them and fight them and beat them up. It's why a lot of role-playing stories take place in these sort of fantasy or sci-fi universes that are so focused on just traveling to a spot, dealing with a boss in that area, and moving on. It's not to say there can't be mystery elements within that, or surprises, revelations within that story, but nonetheless, the idea of just traveling to a spot and dealing with what's at that spot is not the same as a detective going, what do I do now? Who do I talk to? How do I put these clues together? Crime fiction is its own genre with its own sort of story structure, and it's one that is not overly conducive to an interactive game, whereas fantasy and sci-fi is. Now, as I've said at the start, this is all my personal opinion. I'm not an expert in this kind of stuff, but I am a fan. And I'm a fan who would really love to get his hands on some sort of video game or RPG that really nails this idea of a mystery story, of putting the player in the position of the detective rather than the Watson character in the narrative. And again, I'm no expert, but I think I've come up with an idea based on some games that I've played that might actually make the idea of a crime mystery RPG possible. And it all starts with a very strange red-headed Canadian man. So back in 2020, COVID came to Australia, and like a lot of other people, my work moved from the workplace to working at home. And my family wasn't as big as it is now. I had a lot more time on my hands. So I thought what I would do is I would take up some hobbies, including try my hand at solo RPGs. Through a wonderful YouTube channel known as High Rollers, I found out about one such solo RPG series called Iron Sworn, and to my joy discovered that Iron Sworn by Sean Tompkins was free. So I downloaded it, I played it, and I did enjoy it, but I found most of my adventures were very superficial. It didn't quite click with me, it didn't quite gel with me. That was until a certain show called Me, Myself and Die. Me, Myself and Die features a guy called Trevor Devall. He's a voice actor and a very accomplished one from what I understand. And he decided, again, during COVID, to play some solo RPG and put it online for everyone to watch. Much to his surprise, though not to anyone else's, his ability to play the solo RPG and do it in an entertaining way was very successful. I found it very entertaining, and more importantly, something in my mind clicked. I saw how you could make a solo RPG really work, namely through just simply asking questions. As you go along, as your character interacts with this world, it's just your job to ask a question and then roll the dice to see if those questions are answered or how they are answered. I was blown away how Trevor Devall was able to create this very intricate and exciting and engaging story and world and characters purely based on just sort of random pieces of information. It was like he was getting these little clues and just putting them together and creating this story. And that's what made me think. What is a crime fiction story but a detective finding seemingly random bits of information, random clues, and putting them together to figure out the story of the crime and how it happened? So instead of sitting down and trying to pre-plan an intricate murder mystery story like I was Agatha Christie, I instead went back to Iron Sworn. I downloaded some more random tables from some other creators, and I played a solo game where, as I went to crime scenes, I would just roll random items at that crime scene. And it would be then my job as the detective to figure out how all those pieces of evidence can work together as a part of the crime that was committed. Now you might say that's crazy, like you get a random lead pencil just sitting on a desk. What's that got to do with this international drug syndicate? But that's the point. When you watch or when you read a crime fiction story, you're sitting there going, what could this piece of evidence have anything to do with that scenario? And then you're blown away when the detective actually shows, no, that was an intricate part of the caper. We're amazed. We wish we could be like the detective in their ability to connect those two pieces of information successfully. So why not do that ourselves? Why not sit there and go, oh no, but see that pencil, there's a symbolic marker code. It sort of says the location of the next drug stash. It's completely made up. You're making that up in your head. But when you roll the dice, you can decide whether that's true or not, whether you're on point or not. It creates the illusion that you're in fact a detective solving a crime. Now, on top of this, you can also take some of those very traditional and reliable game mechanics, combat mechanics in a role-playing game, and you can reskin them. Not just reskinning them from, I don't know, a fantasy setting to a cowboy western setting, but instead reskinning them from combat, any form of combat, into instead a conversation. I'd been thinking about that for a while, turning Iron Sworn's system of combat in which you don't have complete control over how the fight goes. You see different people having initiative within the combat, and transforming that into a conversation where instead of you literally fighting, you're just having a battle of words, a war of wit. And that way you can still emulate the idea of someone who's talking to you, who's having a conversation with you, and doesn't want to reveal certain bits of information in a way that is out of the hands of the player. So combining these two ideas, getting clues off of random tables and having conversation systems that are based around the combat systems of pre-existing games, just reskinning them as a conversation, I figured you have there the foundation of a crime fiction solo RPG. So I thought, let's give it a go. And I did. I played a version of this game just by myself, diaring down what happened, and I quite enjoyed the experience on the whole. It worked, more or less. There were ways in which I could roll the dice and use certain game mechanics to decide whether or not my deductions as a detective was correct or not. And I found it quite enjoyable. It felt more cohesive. It felt less like I was Watson watching the crime being solved by a clever detective, and it felt more like I was the detective himself or herself, sitting there going, what on earth is going on? How do these clues connect? Eureka! I know it could be this. This is how it could work together. Now, like I said, I journaled this, I diaried this, I wrote down these stories as I went, and good opportunity to practice my creative writing skill based on prompts given to me. But I do find that I have the gift of the gab, so I thought I would take this idea online, which has led to the creation of this video and some others that I'm making. My goal is to create a series of YouTube videos telling a crime fiction story using these role-playing game systems that have been retooled and reskinned to create an effective mystery RPG that doesn't rely on the GM creating a pre-existing story that the player has to solve, but rather a mystery emerging through investigated clues and dramatic antagonistic conversations. And a player who has to sit there scratching their head going, well, how does this all fit together? And having lots of those eureka moments. So that's what I'm doing. I've started to create the series. It is the Big Dry series featuring our detective David Race. Lots of ideas borrowed from Agatha Christie and from noir stories. But ultimately at the heart of the game is going to be these random rolls and these random conversations. And again, I just want to throw out a thanks to all the people who made these ideas come together. As I said, I didn't come up with this stuff. This was stuff that was created by, like I said, Sean Tompkins, who created Iron Swan, a very fun, very effective RPG. Free. Go online, download it, give it a go. It doesn't have to be a solo play. You can use it with a group of people, and it's a lot of fun. I also want to again thank Trevor Duval. It's a very entertaining series. Go across to Me, Myself and Die. Not only is it entertaining, but for me personally, it made the whole experience click in my head. So thank you so much to those people for not only creating very engaging and interesting content, but also getting me to think a little bit deeper about how these mechanics work and how crime fiction stories work. And so really, the last thing, all I've got to say is I really do hope that you will join me in one of these crime fiction stories. Give it a go. They're a bit lengthier than I thought they would be, but I'll try and make them snappier. They're going to be coming out about once a week. As best I can. So come along for the ride. I'm going to make them anyway because I just enjoy the creation process. But if you want to watch, if you don't find them too annoying with this crummy iPhone setup, then I hope that you'll find them interesting and engaging, at least give you some ideas as to how you could possibly create your own sort of mystery story using this system. So thank you again for watching. I really do hope you join us and have a lot of fun. Bye. Thank you again for watching. This is the part of the video where I do ask you to like and subscribe if you enjoyed what you've watched. But I would also like to draw your attention to some awesome people doing some excellent things. The Cancer Council Australia is an organisation that is striving for a future without cancer. What they do is they raise funds for cancer research. They also spread awareness and empower people to reduce their cancer risk. They are a charity most famous for their Daffodil Day. However, they are willing to partner with all sorts of people to do anything they can to raise money to help create a better future. If you'd like to find out more, go to cancercouncil.com.au or you can call them at 13 11 20. If you live outside of Australia, can I encourage you, seek out organisations who are also trying to create awareness or fund cancer research so that we could all live in a brighter future. So I'm not getting paid to say these things. These are just good people doing good things in this world and letting you know how you can be a part of it. So if these people's work grabs your attention, can I encourage you, go to Google, look them up, visit their website and see what you can do for this excellent, excellent cause. Bye.